Sorry about that. So, what does Apple Park mean? Thanks for commenting. I had the mute. This was okay, but I had another mute, a software mute that was on. Thank you. So, what is Apple Day? People are saying, what is Apple Day? Apple Day, Apple Day. What time is it in Apple Park in Poland? It's 14:06 p.m. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, which is where the Future Media Concepts is doing all their time, because that's where they're located in New York on the East Coast. So, it's 10 o'clock, 4 hours, a little less than 4 hours. We're going to be hearing from the Apple Final Cut Pro team, the Pro Apps team. Hi, boss. Now audio is fine. Hello, thank you. Thank you for just always tell me. Listen, I got a lot of things to watch. Look at all these things I have. I have this big wide screen and I got to monitor things all over the place. So I was looking at my one thing and it was unmuted, but it wasn't coming through. So thank you for telling me. So what's going on today? So if you're familiar with the Global Summit, first off, I'm curious how many people on this stream are going to the Global Summit. That's one of the things that I wanted to find out. Gert says good vibes. Good vibes meaning that you think there's going to be some news at the Final Cut Pro Global Summit from the Apple Final Cut Pro team. I hope there is as well. Besides the Silicon Mac. I mean, that's small portion of Final Cut Pro editors are using Apple Silicon. So most of the people by far for years will be using Intel. So I'm interested in what it does on Intel and Apple Silicon myself. Right? Who thinks that? First off, who's going? Who's going to the Global Summit? Who's going to see the Apple event today? Gert says he hopes so. I hope so as well. 2 o'clock, which is a little less than, it's 3 hours and 45 minutes from right now. That was my mute button. That's what it's for, cough button, mute button. So 3 hours, 45 minutes from right now, they're going to be, Apple will be presenting live from Global Park. Live from Apple Park. Gert says the M1 news online is quite amazing. People are surprised by the performance. I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. However, these first M1 Macs are consumer level Macs. I'm interested in the Pro Macs, the iMac Pro when that comes out, 16-inch MacBook Pro when that comes out, the Mac Pro in 2 years from now when that comes out. Apple said it'll take 2 years to get to that point. So I'll be interested in the Pro level machines. I don't buy 13-inch MacBook Pros, I don't buy Mac Minis, and I don't buy MacBook Airs. 16-inch MacBook Pro, that's what I'll be most interested in because I'm not replacing my Mac Pro anytime soon. So, yes, I'm not surprised. I mean, why in the world would Apple switch if they didn't have a big performance boost? I mean, I understand that Intel has stagnated, that's for sure. But anyway, let's take a look over here. FCPX Global Virtual Summit. How it works. The conference is delivered live at Zoom's desktop. Let's look at the program for today. 2020 program. These are all the things that we've already seen. Lots of good people with presentations, but today, look at this. This is what we're interested in, right? So Eastern Daylight Time starts at 1 p.m. with the keynote. Andrew B. Stein, founder of the Orphan Starfish Foundations. 1 p.m. This is Apple Park. We're actually doing a test. The attendees of the summit are doing a test today a tech test to see if we can log in properly, because Apple doesn't like Zoom. They don't like the security issues associated with Zoom, so they're not using Zoom. They're using WebEx. I don't blame them. I'm not a big fan of Zoom either. So they're using Cisco's WebEx today. And we have to do a tech login, people that are going to go, make sure you can hear, make sure. I don't know if there's any interaction today, to be honest with you. I don't know how that's going to work, whether we can submit questions while the event's going on live, if they will answer questions afterwards during the summit. I don't know. I know one thing. The Final Cut Pro, Pro Apps, Pro Video team has a presentation to give us. And I'm sure it's very, very well rehearsed. Everyone that I've seen so far has been that way. So I expect this one is as well. If it is indeed live and not pre-recorded like WWDC and the Apple events, that will be very cool. That's what they're saying. Live from Apple Park is what they're saying. So that'll be a live, maybe a little bit interactive. They're not going to get thrown off track of their presentation, I'm sure. But we'll see how that goes. So Garrett says, yeah, those will have M4s or higher, I presume, 16 cores and up. M2s, M3s, M4s, I'm looking for more than 16 gigabytes of RAM. I'm looking for more than one display. I think right now the M1s can only handle one display. I have two displays. Like to have the ability to have more than that. But I just don't buy, I don't buy the consumer level Macs, which is what the M1 is now. It's in the MacBook Air, Mac Mini, and it's in the 13-inch MacBook Pro. When it gets to the 16-inch MacBook Pro, I'm sure it's going to be a Pro version of the M1 or M2 chip. It's not going to be the same one that's in the other ones. I'd be surprised if it was, because there's limitations. No eGPUs, 16 gigabytes of RAM maximum. I understand the RAM's used differently than the way RAM is used now, but still, when the Pro level Silicon Macs come out, I'll be interested at that point. That'll be right in time, because normally I upgrade my Mac every 3 years. My 2019 Mac Pro is almost 1 year old. They said it'll be 2 years before they get to that Mac Pro. So right on schedule, when they have a Mac Pro Silicon, my Mac Pro, my Intel Mac Pro, it'll be time for me to upgrade. So it'll be perfect for that. But I am interested in the 16-inch MacBook Pro as well. And I'm not surprised at the performance that I'm seeing. I'm not surprised at all. I expected giant leaps in performance over Intel. I just did. If Apple today will present a brand new version of Final Cut Pro, in your opinion, when will it be released? I don't expect that. I don't expect a brand new version. But here's what they've done in the past, okay? Apple has done, when we were on Final Cut Pro 10.2, at the Creative Summit, Apple 10.3 came out the day before at an Apple event, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So at the Creative Summit, right there within 24 hours, 10.3 came out. Public knowledge. 1 year later, we were at the Creative Summit, and Apple previewed 10.4 at the Creative Summit. 1 year later, once again, that was public. We were allowed to talk about it. We were encouraged to post on social media. And I wasn't even sure if it was really 10.4. I asked one of the guys, is this 10.4? They goes, yeah, 10.4. So 1 year later, 10.3 to 10.4 was, it wasn't out at the summit. It was previewed at the summit, public preview. So that was 2017. 2018, public preview of 10.4.4 at the Creative Summit. We were allowed to talk about it. They presented it at the Creative Summit. Last year, nothing. Last year was nothing. They just rehashed what was already available on 10.4.7 or 10.4.8. So I think the Apple should show us some of the future things they're working on for Final Cut Pro. Now, some of that will be on silicon, of course, but don't forget, Apple, that the majority of your Final Cut Pro users are on Intel and will be for years. So don't leave the Intel users behind. Make sure you have features. I'm sure they do. I'm sure there's going to be feature parity between the Intel and the silicon for a few years. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be the same speed. The silicon's going to beat its counterpart, the Intel version, that's for sure, and speed and stuff. But as far as feature parity, keep the Intel people in mind. Don't be showing us an hour of Apple Silicon only Final Cut Pro. That's not going to be interesting to the majority of us. Little bit, 10 minutes is plenty. So I'm not sure if this is off topic, but I use the iPhone 11 for a camera, and I experience random glitches in the footage in Final Cut Pro. Do you know of any solutions for this? What year Mac are you using? And also, are you using H.265 or H.264? If you're using H.265, switch the iPhone to H.264. That should solve your problems. I have 11 too. If Apple announces a Final Cut Pro update today, will you or others be able to talk about it, or will it get leaked? So we've been able to talk about it 3 out of the last 4 Final Cut Pro summits. Okay? 10.3, we could talk about it. 10.4, we could talk about it. 10.4.4, we could talk about it. Now, 10.4 was not released at the summit. 10.4 was previewed at the summit and released in December of that year. That was 2017. So, yes, we were shown a new version. Yes, all 3 of those years we were allowed to talk about it. Last year was an exception. There was no new version of Final Cut Pro. It had been out for a month, 6 weeks before the summit. So there was no new version shown. There was no new version to talk about at the summit. There's nothing released around the summit or anything. So 3 times that they've showed us a version of Final Cut Pro, we were allowed to talk about it immediately in public. That's what I'm hoping happens today. I'm hoping for 2 things. I'm hoping we get to see a preview of a future version of Final Cut Pro, and I hope we can talk about it in public. Eric Emmerich says, I think there's a good chance for a preview feature-rich new Final Cut Pro because 10.5 was mainly a reset to silicon-based Macs. That's correct number-wise anyway. Garrett says, make proxies of the videos, iPhone 11. I would just say switch to H.264. You shouldn't have any problems if you have a recent Mac. I don't have any problem. I've been editing 4K footage for years on an iMac before this, now my Mac Pro. From my GH5, my GH4 shot 4K. My GH5 shot 4K. My iPhone 6s Plus shot 4K. My iPhone 11 Pro shot 4K. And now my iPhone, oh, I got that right here. My iPhone 12 Pro Max also shoots 4K. I'm not even having any issues editing 10-bit HDR from this phone in Final Cut. Very smooth. Now that's Final Cut Pro 10.5. Very, very smooth. If you have an older Mac, try using proxies. Like Garrett says, make proxies of the video. It's very easy to do now. So let's go back to this real quick. This is what's new in the Pro. This is what they call it. What's new in the Pro video applications and Apple Silicon-based Macs. So it's a 2-pronged thing. I don't want to just see an hour of the Apple Silicon Macs in Final Cut. That just would not interest me. Not for an hour. 10 minutes, 15 minutes is fine because that's some of the future. But let's just see Final Cut Pro on Intel and Silicon-based Macs, not just Silicon-based Macs. So the interesting thing is, like I said, we got a preview. We have to log in. Like I said, Apple is not using Zoom. They don't trust Zoom. Zoom is not secure. So they're not using Zoom. They're using WebEx. Cisco, I think, is what they do. So WebEx, I'm sure. Listen, it's Apple. Okay? They have hundreds of thousands of employees. I guess they know what they're doing as far as not using Zoom and using WebEx. Jack Isaac says, I'm still waiting for better audio editing in Final Cut Pro and any form of tracking. Audio for sure. Audio needs work. They haven't updated audio for quite a while. So audio is 50% or more of good video. Please give us audio. So, are you excited? I mean, I don't want to get your expectations way up in the air. I'm trying to temper my expectations, but it is exciting. They pushed an iOS update yesterday to iPhone 12 users, Richard. Yes, I updated my iPhone 12 yesterday after I saw that. So I have my updates on manual. I don't let my OS update manual automatically. I don't let Final Cut update automatically. I don't let anything update automatically, including my new phone. I saw the reports that they had a new version 12 iOS update. So once I saw that, I updated it manually. There was something to do with screen issues or something, flashings or whatever. I don't know. But listen, so 1 hour, 3.5 hours from now, we will get the Apple Final Cut Pro Video Applications team presenting at Apple Park. Whether we can talk about it, I don't know. I do not know what the deal is. I would think it would be a little difficult to, since you're going to be online, to stop people from spreading any information that you have. That's certainly going to affect the way they're doing the presentation. They have to realize that the people can, whatever, even if they're not supposed to. The best way to keep track of what's going on at the Apple event is subscribe, click the notification button over there at Richard Taylor, youtube.com, Richard Taylor TV. That's the best way to be notified of any news about the Apple presentation. That's the best way, because as soon as I go live, you'll be notified. Simone says, I'm worried about the future a little bit. Okay. I'm not really worried about it, but if you look at something like Resolve 17 and their incredible feature list that they came out with, and you look at Final Cut Pro 10.5, which was this big of an update. Normally the full point updates are gigantic, page after page after page after page. 10.5, I understand what they've done. It seems like they've reset the counting of Final Cut Pro to coincide with the release of the Silicon Mac. I understand that. However, that means that 10.5.1 will be a big feature update. It seems logical, since 10.5 was not a big feature update. They had a lot of bug fixes and optimizations and stuff mixed in there. So the other thing is, let me just check on this a second. I want to show you something. This is a Logic update. This is Logic Pro 10.6. Now compare this to the Final Cut Pro update. Now, one of the things, this is a lot of bug fixes and stuff, but look at this thing. All right, it's already more than Final Cut Pro 10.5. And it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. The list, even though it's not a lot of new features, It just keeps going and going and going and going. Now, Final Cut has had updates like this as well. Point updates, 10.4.4, 10.4.9 were both big feature updates. Look at this. It's still going. This is Logic, the Logic team doing this. Look at this. It's still going. I could be here for 10 minutes. Like I said, a lot of this is bug fixes, of course, but that's also what Final Cut Pro does. For 10.5, their bug fix optimization was much more than any features that they had. The list was longer. Look at this. It's still going. It's still going. This is Logic 10.6. It's ridiculous. They're just showing off, aren't they? The Logic team. Come on. There you go. Finally. Finally, they got to the end of that. So that's the Logic team. Simone says, at this point, I haven't many expectations about Final Cut Pro. Probably best thing to do is not have any expectations. Garrett says they should make a bridge between Final Cut Pro and Logic. They have a somewhat of a bridge. It's not very efficient at this point, but it's somewhat there. But once again, Logic is a music production app. Logic is, I had to reset my expectations when 10.5 came out in May. Logic is not a post-production film app like perhaps Pro Tools or Digital Performer are. It's not. It's music production. Apple's made that quite clear. So I use it to edit my podcast, Final Cut Pro Radio. I love it for that. I just love Logic. It has a scrolling timeline. You can have two different zoom levels. One up top is more compressed. One down bottom is more expanded. And both of them zoom so the waveform is right in the center as you're watching. It has notes. It has lots more colors. It has markers, timeline markers rather than clip markers. Final Cut Pro only has clip markers. So I really hope they make Final Cut Pro for the iPad, iPhone, especially for creating titles and easier to share in social media. Yes, I agree. It would be hard to contain leaks, everyone not in the room together. Right. I guess they can do a virtual NDA. I mean, would never reveal anything that I'm not supposed to reveal. That's not what I do. Never would I do that. So, but I'm thinking, listen, 3 times, 10.3, 10.4, and 10.4.4, they showed us a new version of Final Cut Pro at the summit. We were immediately allowed to talk about it in public, encouraged to post on social media. I'm hoping for something today. They could say coming in 2021. I mean, they could say December, that would even be better. But they could say coming in 2021, go ahead and post about it on social media. Eric says, or maybe 10.5 Logic was a mess. No, 10.5 Logic was not a mess by any stretch of the imagination. And Logic already had 10.5.1 to fix the bugs in 10.5. So, if you remember correctly, we got Final Cut Pro 10.4.9 at the end of August. 29 days later, we got 10.4.10 to fix the bugs in 10.4.9. That's the way the software works. You put things out, sometimes the beta doesn't catch it, beta testing doesn't catch it, and you fix the bugs as fast as you can. I think Apple is surrendering to DaVinci and Avid. I don't think they're surrendering to anybody. If I'm interested in DaVinci 17, Resolve 17, I'm also interested in LumaTouch. And besides LumaTouch being the best NLE video editor on the iPad, since you can now run iPad apps on the new Macs, the new Mac Pro, the new M1 Macs, Apple Silicon Macs, I think they're going to either release a Mac version, which they talked about a couple years ago, or they're going to refine the iPad version so it runs a little smoother when you run it on a Mac. Those are the two I'm interested in besides Final Cut Pro. DaVinci Resolve 17 for sure, and LumaFusion. Now, here's the thing about, let me just pull this down here a second. Here's the thing about DaVinci Resolve and all the time Blackmagic. Their pre-release materials are phenomenal. The graphics are phenomenal. But a lot of times they don't quite match up to the pre-release stuff. So that's interesting. I don't think Avid is going to make an M1 version. The core code is too old. Really? I'd be surprised if eventually they don't make one. Eric says, nah, they really don't care much what Blackmagic or Avid are doing. They have their own agenda for sure, the Final Cut Pro team. Sometimes that might be dictated by Apple, corporate, rather than the Final Cut Pro team itself. I think we saw that at the Creative Summit last year. I'll give you an example. For 2 or 3 months before the summit last year, we were told we were going to go into Apple Park, have a tour of Apple Park, maybe see the Final Cut Pro presentation there. For months, that's what it was. When they clarified, yes, we're going to Apple Park. 2 weeks before the Final Cut Pro Summit, Apple went, you're not coming to Apple Park. That's what happened. That was a disappointment. But the Creative Summit itself was fantastic, as it always is. But we were excited about going to Apple Park, and then we didn't get to go. We got to go to the Visitors Center, which we always do. That's for sure. Here's Final Cut Pro Radio HQ backyard. Here's my desktop. This, by the way, is one of my Final Cut Pro Creative Summit badges, FCPX Creative Summit. This was from 2018. Look at that. Every year we get these. Apple gives us one to get into Apple Park, too. This was for the all-access pass that I had to get into the sessions at the Creative Summit and be able to walk around without any issues. So, yeah, this is an example. Resolve did launch version 17.1 the day after Final Cut Pro 10.5 was launched. Interesting week it was. It certainly was. Listen, Resolve 17 looked phenomenal. What they're doing with that application is absolutely fantastic. I'm probably going to get the studio version of Resolve 17 with that little. They had that little box like this with all the dials on it that's specifically for Resolve 17. And you get a free version of Studio if you pay for the box. Garrett says, see you later. Where you going, Garrett? Nuno says, show us pics from the summit. Well, let's do this. Let's do this real quick. Here are some pics from previous summits. Movies, not pics. Juniper Hotel Courtyard. We eat there, right there all the time at the Steve Martin, Sam Messman, Philip Hodgetts. Here's Ian Anderson, Lee Herbert. They look at this. Jeff Greenberg. Look at this. John Cleese was there. Happened to spot him at the Juniper Hotel. This is the lobby, typical lobby. The rooms are on the right-hand side. Steve Martin.
So if you have any questions specifically, part of these things is not just to talk at you, but like have conversations. So if you want to like bring up your laptop and you want to have questions, I basically want to make myself available to you guys while I'm here this week. Sound good? Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot.
I got 7 minutes before I have to tear everything down, so if you want to see the timeline, play with the timeline, feel free to come up here. Or if you want to go get some quick coffee, go to the bathroom before the next presentation, feel free to do that. Thanks again so much for coming.
That was a very timely tip.
Well, actually, you're having crap shoes, you know?
This is when Final Cut Pro 10.4 was released, and we could talk about it immediately. That's what I'm hoping for today. Those are obviously the ones that were in person. Fantastic events. I hope we can get back to it next year. I mean, it's clear that Apple has lost interest in the world of professional post-production. No, it's not obvious to me. It's not clear to me that they've done that. They have a different view. Listen, the Hollywood market is this big, okay, as far as numbers go. The educational market, for example, is much bigger. You think Apple should spend all the time on this little market, or should they spend the time on this market? Now, obviously, things that professionals need in Hollywood will go down to this market. They can come down to it for sure. And I'm not saying the Hollywood market's not important. I'm just saying they shouldn't dedicate all their resources for the Hollywood market. They should just do everything proportionally. Have to do some work before watching Apple. Very good, Gert. Amazing. Thanks for sharing. Absolutely. But anyway, we're going to be watching the Final Cut Pro team at 2 o'clock Eastern in about little less than 3.5 hours from right now. We have to do a tech review to make sure we can log in properly at 12 o'clock, something like that. So we'll see how all that's going to work. But the main thing is, listen, you want to be notified when I go live. This is the best place. YouTube.com, Richard Taylor TV. That's the most consolidated place to go. Subscribe over there and click the notification buttons. Eric says, besides, Hollywood's made it clear they are locked into Avid. Eric, that's true presently, but that's not true necessarily going in the future. And the main reason I say that is they're locked into they're locked into Avid infrastructure, to the servers and all that stuff. The NLE itself, no, not necessarily. Now, I understand it's tied in. They have lots and lots of money that, and I understand, and also the unions are involved and they want to use Avid. That's all part of the deal. But we've seen Hollywood films made on Final Cut. It's not even a question. We've seen it made. We've seen them made. The Banker was made last year with Samuel Jackson. Other ones, they've been made 4 or 5, half a dozen films have been made with Final Cut Pro. Hollywood films have already been made. Now, Final Cut Pro has some features and improvements that it absolutely needs to incorporate for pro editors. We've been talking about some of these things for years and years and years. Caleb says, is this for the public to view? It is not for the public to view. None of these sessions at Final Cut Pro Creative Summit or the Global Summit presented by Apple, Apple has very specifically said this is specifically for the attendees of the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. I mean, the people that are going there pay to go. It is not going to be public. It's not going to be recorded. And if you want to watch it, you have to buy a pass and watch it live only. It's not being recorded. It's not going to be available for playback later. So, big money hates change more than anyone. That's correct, but change is going to come regardless. Change is going to come. They can only stop it for so long. And I really don't care. Avid Hollywood, Final Cut Pro Hollywood Premiere Pro Hollywood. Final Cut Pro will make inroads where it possibly can. Hollywood is not the top priority of Final Cut Pro team. Okay, it's not. It's mixed in there with other priorities, but Hollywood is not the top priority of the Final Cut Pro team. People that think it is are wrong. There's plenty. They probably have a dozen different priorities for the Final Cut Pro team where they're headed. YouTubers, education, college, independent films, documentaries. Hollywood's mixed in there, but they're not going to dedicate all their resources just to appease Hollywood. It's not going to happen. Now, Avid they've been in there for a long time, so that's fine. It's not going to really, Final Cut Pro will make inroads where it can and where it's important. I don't expect Final Cut Pro team to dedicate all their resources to Hollywood, and they haven't. So that's not a surprise now, is it? So my question is, who all is going to the Global Summit in this audience right now? Just say yes, no. If you're going, if you're not going. I've been there. They've had some coffee breaks and stuff. But obviously you don't want to pay full price now. It's only got 4 days left. But once again, you will not be able to see the Apple presentation. It's not being recorded. And I don't know how much we're going to be able to say. I just have no idea. Eric says, yes, he's going. Jacob says, no, he's not going. Okay. Jacob, you want to pay attention. I keep telling you this. Subscribe. Richard Taylor TV over there at YouTube. You'll be notified of any news about the presentation at Apple Park today. Okay? That's all I'm going to say about that for right now. I will come back live I'll come back live today to talk about as much as I can about the Apple presentation. Hi from Denmark. I from Denmark. I guess he means he is going. I'm not sure what that means. Final Cut Pro Radio HQ. We got a bird at the bird feeder. Look at that. I can't see what it is. One thing we've learned about the bird feeder is if you put out expensive food, you get expensive birds. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. We get the bluebirds and the exotics and woodpeckers and all kinds of stuff. So, youtube.com/Richard Taylor TV. Subscribe over there. You'll be notified when I go live. I will be going live later today, after the Apple presentation. Caleb says, what software do you use to stream? I'm a big proponent of Ecamm Live. It's fantastic software. It's Mac only, which is what I am. I'm Mac only as well. So that's what I use. And I also use Restream.io because we're streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope TV all at the same time. After the presentation, you will be back online? Yes, I will. I'll be back online regardless. If I can't say anything, I can't say anything. I'll still come back online. This is a pre-show. This is talking before. Normally they have coffee at the Creative Summits in the morning at 10:30. They didn't have any today. Everybody's getting ready for the Apple Day. That's the big presentation. First off, there's a couple of things I want to say. Thanks to Future Media Conferences, all the people there. They've worked very, very hard to put on this summit, this global summit, year after year for the Final Cut Pro community. Thank you, thank you, thank you Future Media conferences. Everybody there is great to work with. This is my 4th or 5th year that I've worked with them. They are fantastic to work with. And I want to encourage them to keep doing these Final Cut Pro Creative Summits. Hopefully, fingers crossed, next year we'll be able to do one in person again at the Juniper Hotel. It's a great venue. Everybody stays in the same hotel. That's fantastic. I'm hoping that'll happen next year. NAB is also supposed to happen next fall instead of next spring. So we'll see how that works out. Obviously, Future Media Concepts or conferences is also involved with NAB. So it might be a little shift of schedules, but thank you. The other people I want to thank, of course, are the watchers, the people that are watching this stream. Thank you for stopping by, for coming over and commenting. And of course, the Final Cut Pro team. All the people on the Final Cut Pro team, I want to thank each and every one of you for doing what you do to make Final Cut Pro a better product. So I'm going to get off here shortly. It's 11 o'clock, 3 hours till showtime. 3 hours till we get to see what, I mean, they haven't said, how do they describe it? So this is how they describe it. What's new in the Pro video applications and Apple Silicon-based Macs? So what's new? We've already seen plenty of videos on what's new in 10.5 because it was such a tiny, tiny little update. What I don't want to see, this is what I don't want to see. I don't want to see a rehashing of what's new in 10.4.9. Okay, that's been out for September, October, November, almost 3 months. So that's not new by any stretch of the imagination. Don't rehash. I hope they don't rehash what's out in 10.4.9. In 10.5, there's not much there. A little bit. Obviously, the future of Final Cut is going to be tied to the Silicon Apple Macs, but it's also tied to Intel Macs for years. So make sure you just don't talk about the Silicon Macs and don't talk about the Intel Macs. That's what I'm hoping. If they rehash 10.4.9, it'll be a big yawn. We've already seen it. We've been seeing the 10.4.9 stuff for months. 10.4.9 was a great update. Don't get me wrong. 10.4.9 was a great update. 10.4.4 was a great update. But we don't need to see 10.4.9 3 months after it's been out. Show us something about the future. What's going on in the future? Does Tim Cook or any of the other executives ever make appearance at the summit, or just the Final Cut Pro team? There's been a couple peripheral people. I'm not sure. No, Tim Cook, no. Tim Cook, absolutely not. I'm not sure. There's been a couple of peripheral people that weren't in the team. At NYFA, they say that Final Cut Pro isn't a professional editing application. Does that affect me anyway? Do I care what people think about Final Cut Pro? No, I don't care. Doesn't affect me at all. I use it. I know it's professional. It's been, what hasn't Final Cut Pro done? It's done major films, 6, 7, 8 major films. It's on lots of TV stations, mostly in Europe. TV stations mostly in Europe. So it's done documentary films. It's done plenty of event videography. It's done plenty of YouTubers use it. What hasn't it done? Of course it's professional. Those people are just either they're behind the times or they have an agenda. They have a bias against it. That doesn't affect me. Doesn't affect me in what I do. I hope it's not just an M1 demo. You and me both. That would be big yawn for me. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's fine, because I want to see some of the things, but show us new features that are coming. Show us new features. Like I said, the majority of Final Cut Pro users are going to be on Intel for years to come. Subscribe over there at youtube.com, Richard Taylor TV. If you want to be notified when I go live, which will be later this afternoon, after the Apple Summit, after the Apple presentation, I will get back as soon as I possibly can. And if I can't say anything, I can't say anything. There's nothing I can do about that. I will absolutely abide by whatever rules are established for the talking about what's in the conference. But if you want to see it live, the only way you can do it is to have a pass. So, is that it for today? I think it is. Look at this. This is my pass. I was an Apple certified trainer, and I went to New York June 7th, 2007. That's when I went to the World Bank Group Apple headquarters up there in New York and got my Apple certification to teach Final Cut Pro, Apple certified professional to teach Final Cut Pro. That's a good comment. Let me pull that up here a second. He says, I say, let's see what Final Cut Pro without the X is all about. That's a good point. Let's see what it is. Let's see what it's all about without the X. Well, yeah, let's see something in the future. Don't show us everything in the past. We've already seen 10.4.9. We've already seen that. 3 months we've seen it. Plenty of YouTube videos. Ripple Training did some videos. Ripple Training didn't do any videos for 10.5 because there was nothing really to talk about. Little teeny bit. 10.5. So Ripple did them for 10.1, 10.2, 10.0, 10.3, 10.4. They didn't do them for 10.5 because there's not a whole lot there. Just a little teeny, I think it's just a number catch up for the Silicon Max, but that's fine. Then give us 10.5.1, or Logic jumped from 10.5 to 10.6. Logic was updated to 10.5 in the middle of May last year. 10.5.1 came out, and then it jumped to 10.6. Maybe Final Cut Pro is going to do the same thing. Maybe the feature update we were expecting with 10.5 is actually going to be 10.6. Don't know. Hopefully we'll see something this afternoon. All right, everyone, my name's Richard Taylor, of course, and subscribe over there at YouTube. And I'm going to be back 3 hours. I'm not going to be back in 3 hours. I'm going to be watching the Apple Final Cut Pro presentation in 3 hours, and I'll report back, and I can tell you as much as they'll let me tell you. Okay? And I hope it's good. I mean, I'm a pretty hopeful person, but we'll see what happens. 10.5 certainly was an odd thing. I understand if they did it for numbering reasons. I understand that. But we'll just have to see how it goes. Any other questions before I log off here? Any other questions? Let's see what's going on here. Thank you, Richard. Hope to see you soon. Absolutely. Either at NAB next year or the Creative Summit's my favorite event by far. The virtual one's been great too. They have coffee time with all these people you can talk to and everybody can comment. So that's great. See ya. Absolutely. 3 hours from right now, we will be watching the Final Cut Pro. They call it the Pro Video Applications team. It's Final Cut Pro and the Pro Video App team and other things from Apple. And they'll be talking to us, the people that have the past. It's a dedicated Final Cut Pro editor, bunch of editors. They'll be telling us, hopefully, what the future of Final Cut is. Don't you think? Are you optimistic or are you pessimistic? Just don't forget to subscribe over there at YouTube. And I'll be back. I will be back later this afternoon after the Final Cut Pro Team presentation at the Creative Summit. Talk to you all later.